Syracuse and Dartmouth have been rowing for the Packard Cup for more than half a century, and today meeting number 59 between these two Northeast powerhouses as the Orange host the Big Green. Hi everybody, welcome to 10 Ike Boathouse in Syracuse, New York for our first ever rowing broadcast on ACC Network Extra. Thanks for making some history with us on this Sunday morning. Alongside former Syracuse rower Joe Peduta, I'm Drew Carter, and Joe, we've been waiting a long time for this one. Should be exciting today.
It should be a great one. Both crews had tough races yesterday, and they're going to come out all guns blazing, trying to make it up today.
Couple of hungry crews out there today between Syracuse and Dartmouth. Let's take a look at the course here in Syracuse with John Nicholson to take us through the preview.
The 2,000-meter course starts on the wide-open water of Onondaga Lake and heads northwest toward the lake outlet entrance about 900 meters away. The halfway point, the 1,000 meters, is just past the breakwater, and now there's smoother water and protection from the elements. The coxswains steer under the New York State Thruway double bridge and then the Long Branch Road Bridge. And as the Syracuse Boathouse comes into view on the right, the crews pass 500 meters to go. Then a sprint under the John Glenn Boulevard Bridge to the finish just beyond.
Beautiful course here in Syracuse. Weather's not too bad today. Here's your schedule of events, about 20 minutes in between each one of these races. You start with the first Varsity 8. The winner of that race takes home the Packard Cup, which currently resides in Syracuse. Then the 2V, the 3V, and the 4V. After that, we'll have your trophy presentation right here on ACC Network Extra. So Syracuse today against Dartmouth, and we know who coaches the Orange. That would be Dave Reichman, nearly 2 decades at the helm of Syracuse. But on the other side for Dartmouth, about half a decade in, is Wyatt Allen. Dana Gray standing by with him downstairs.
Here with Dartmouth head coach Wyatt Allen in front of Syracuse and Dartmouth, racing for yet another Packard Cup. Coach Allen, in your 5th year, how special is it to see a program like yours and Syracuse get a broadcast like this here today?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly special for our programs. Our sport in general doesn't get coverage like this. And it's, usually it's not a great spectator experience. And so I think the coverage all the way down the course is going to be a big improvement for fans of both programs.
So a busy weekend for your group and Syracuse as well. A split decision yesterday against Brown. What can you take away from the races that happened yesterday?
Yeah, we raced a very good Brown crew yesterday, and we're racing a very good Syracuse crew today. There are certain points in the race, and I'll kind of keep the strategy under our hats, but couple moments yesterday where we sagged a little bit that we're going to try to address on the race course today.
So a couple of contests in 2 days plus travel. You know that going into the weekend. Is there anything that you tell your guys at the outset or throughout Saturday and Sunday, try and keep spirits higher and the energy up?
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, we get used to racing multiple times in a weekend on purpose, right? When we get to the sprints in a couple of weeks, we'll be asked to race twice in one day, and then the IRA, sometimes you're racing, 4 times over 3 days. So a weekend like this is good preparation for championship season down the line. And it's really about, staying focused. It's going to come down to mental toughness out there on the course. I think, the nice thing is we know Syracuse traveled a long way yesterday. We had a long day racing and then traveling up here. So I think the playing field's pretty level on that front. And I think it's going to be a good experience for both programs.
Definitely indeed. Thanks for your time, Coach. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Let's see who's going to be in the boats for that first Varsity 8 race. Dartmouth on your left, Syracuse on your right. Remember, winner of this race takes home that Packard Cup 1 through 8 with a coxswain at the bottom. Joe, I know you're looking at the stroke seat today for both teams.
I am. Limeister in for Syracuse. He's got some solid experience in the stroke seat. What's also interesting for Dartmouth is they moved the 3-man from the first varsity, Evan Dwinell, up into the stroke seat. A couple of changes there. One other change, Greg Bauerfeld has been moved into the varsity from the JV. I know Coach Reichman was looking for a little more smoothness in this technique, and hopefully that'll pay off.
All right, Dartmouth number 10 in the country, Syracuse number 9. Packard Cup on the line for the 59th time. Let's go down with John Nicholson for the race. John, go ahead.
40 degrees here in Syracuse out on Onondaga Lake. A very light rain wind out of the west-northwest at just about 3 miles an hour. Very light headwind they'll be rowing into. A little bit of a ripple here in the lake, but pretty smooth, all things considered, as Dave Reichman, the head coach at Syracuse, would say. Practically perfect Syracuse rowing. Referee Larry Laszlo with the start. Attention, go, and we have a start. Syracuse closest to us as you watch. Dartmouth in the far lane, orange and green going against one another. Syracuse is at 43 strokes a minute off the start. Maybe has a little bit of a deck now. 46 for Dartmouth. Both crews rowing smoothly. Syracuse with a slight edge. Dartmouth keeps coming back with each successive strokes. They'll settle in another few strokes down to their racing pace, and we'll head out to the first 500-meter mark. Syracuse now down to 40 strokes a minute, still pretty high. And Dartmouth is down to 39, so they're getting close to the settle, if not into it already. Syracuse with just a little bit of a lead, maybe a bow ball. Crews look relatively smooth going into this headwind. This first varsity race, this for the Packard Trophy. Syracuse now settling at 38 strokes a minute. Kyle Leimeister, the starboard stroke. That means the oar is on Coxon's right. Dartmouth at 38.5. Dartmouth with the more traditionally port stroke. As we pass 500 meters gone in a minute and 25 seconds. Crews just about dead even. Syracuse maybe has a deck at best. Let's see who's got a move in him now as the big green trying to move back up and see if they can get ahead of the orange. These teams very evenly matched based on their performances so far this year. Syracuse has wins against Wisconsin and Cornell and Navy, and yesterday against Columbia. Both boats now rowing at 37 strokes a minute into this headwind, and Dartmouth now is coming up even with Syracuse as we approach the breakwater, just a few strokes away from now. The water will get even smoother in there, and you might look for a move as they close up on the halfway point. 1,000 meters to go. Both crews rowing smoothly. Dartmouth now maybe with a bow ball lead from our angle as we get behind me here in the launch. Syracuse will be coming first underneath the thruway bridge, and then the Liverpool Long Branch Road Bridge. Dartmouth with a seat lead now over Syracuse as we approach the halfway point. Halfway down the course. 2:52 for Dartmouth, 2 minutes 52 seconds. Dartmouth now looks like it's making a bit of a move and opening up. Maybe a half length now from our point of view. Correction, only about a seat for Dartmouth. This will be a fight to the finish, as Joe Peduta predicted before we started the race. Nice smooth water now underneath the thruway bridge and coming up on Long Branch. Dartmouth on the outside as we come up ahead toward the Syracuse boathouse. Syracuse, of course, in orange on the inside. Dartmouth got a little bit of a lead. Let's see where Syracuse will try to make a move. Syracuse 38 strokes a minute now. And Dartmouth now has a 3-seat lead at 37. Dartmouth understroking Syracuse. Coming up on 500 to go. Dartmouth maintaining the lead. Syracuse looking for some strength. Dartmouth still with the lead. Up ahead of us is the John Glenn Boulevard Bridge just before the finish. Syracuse is up to 39 strokes a minute, but not making any headway into the big green lead. A lot of splashing here. Dartmouth is up at 41, sprinting already practically. Just as Joe Peduta said before this race began, See who really wants it now. Who's going to dig down for those last few strokes? Zach Vlaandres looks across from Syracuse to Dartmouth both.
Just let me know. It looks like Dartmouth is still maintaining a little bit of a lead here as we're coming into the last 15 or 20 strokes. Looks like Dartmouth's been able to hold off Syracuse. However, we're going to have to wait for a call from the finish, as this is going to be extremely close. From the angle we have here, it does look like Dartmouth may be the winner, but we're looking at the finish line coming through. Wait a minute, Syracuse just pressed on ahead. It is too close to call from here. Looks like Syracuse has got the advantage here with a terrific sprint coming out. I'm going to have to give this one to Syracuse by maybe 4 or 5 seats as they approach the finish line, and it appears that the Syracuse don't have the angle exactly here. Terrific finish from both crews. We were looking for this to be an extremely tight race, and boy, it was. Waiting for the official call from the finish line, and we'll update you as soon as we get that. What a terrific race from both crews.
Wow, so Syracuse with the monster kick down the stretch there, Joe. How about that finish by the 'Cuse?
Unbelievable. So both crews, having lost yesterday, obviously came in here just about as hungry as they could possibly be. We saw Dartmouth go out a little bit early on, both crews rowing very efficiently as they were coming down the course. Dartmouth right here, about 600 meters to go, had about 3 or 4 seats of a lead. And then Syracuse pressed hard. Leimeister, we talked about early on. Boy, did he get that rating up to 41, 42 strokes a minute. And it looks like the home crowd here at Syracuse is pretty happy with it. But I got to say, Dartmouth did an unbelievable job all the way through that race. Extremely efficient. I was looking for any issues on the stroke, getting sloppy towards the end. Dartmouth looked like it was finishing their strokes just a little bit too early in the sprint, which might have cost them a couple of inches a run per stroke. But, geez, that was terrific racing by all crews. Love that drone footage.
That was a heck of a race here for our first broadcast ever on ACC Network Extra as Syracuse climbs out of a hole to take down Dartmouth, and the Packard Cup is staying here at Ten Eyck Boathouse in Syracuse. Here's some cheers here as well. I think you're right, Joe. I think the official word has just come down that the Orange have brought home the Packard Cup for the 2nd consecutive season, and that means a lot to this program.
Yeah, one thing I got to say, though, do not count Dartmouth out. Dartmouth got on the water April 3rd, several weeks after they normally do. I would expect to see Dartmouth back in the hunt big time at the Eastern Sprints. They are a very good crew.
All right, so Syracuse does win this one, though. In the Packard Cup, we're going to take a short break. Come back with us. We'll break down that entire first varsity 8. We'll show you exactly how the Orange came back to win the Packard Cup and a look at the history of the trophy, which has been around since 1959. Stick with us on ACC Network. The Packard Cup is staying in Syracuse at Ten Eyck Boathouse as the Orange even up the Packard Cup at 5-5 this decade and then win it here in 2019 by a nose. Hi, everybody. Welcome back inside Ten Eyck Boathouse. Drew Carter back with former Syracuse rower Joe Paduta. And, Joe, we were just talking about that. That was an unbelievable comeback by Syracuse down the stretch.
Yeah, they were down maybe as much as a quarter, a half a length coming down the course, and we saw them come down. As they were coming through the 1,000-meter, I'm thinking Dartmouth is way too tough, way too strong, but Leimeister was able to pull it out at the end, get the rating up high enough.
We were ready to call it for the big green. Let's see how it all went down, and a hot start out of the gate for Dartmouth. First 500 meters, really all green.
Yeah, you could tell Dartmouth was certainly ready for the start. Syracuse got to a little bit of jump, a seat or two out after the start. And then what happened after that was Dartmouth just inch by inch pulled away. The crucial part of the race usually is about 1,000 meters to 1,500 meters gone. That's when your legs are screaming. You're saying, I just don't want to do this. What the heck am I doing out here? Dartmouth was able to take advantage there. As you can see in the monitor, Dartmouth's pulling out ahead. Then in the last 500 meters, Syracuse put on a huge sprint. Dartmouth looked like, quite frankly, like they were just ending their strokes a little bit too early. They weren't quite as efficient. You can see the splash on the right side of the screen there, which is Dartmouth. Syracuse is rowing a higher rate, more strokes per second. I think that enabled them to pull out, as you can see, just a boat deck ahead of the big green. So kudos to both crews. That was amazing racing from all. I got to give this to Leimeister and the coxswain for able to get that rating up at the end.
Leimeister in that stroke seat for Syracuse, and Zach Vlaandres, the coxswain, the senior for the Orange, are responsible for pulling it out there for the 'Cuse at the end. Now, this one was neck and neck. Syracuse wins by 0.8 of a second. 5:51.4 is the final for the Orange. 5:52.2 the final for the Big Green. It really doesn't get much closer than that, Joe.
It does, and I'd also say that clearly Coach Reichman's move to put Bauerfeld into the boat to sort of smooth things out certainly didn't hurt him. Those guys looked like they were moving. We've got a couple other great races coming up. It's going to be neck and neck all the way down the course, so this is going to be a great morning of racing for both the Big Green and the Orange.
It's already been an awesome day of racing, and the Packard Cup is staying here in Syracuse. This is the 59th iteration of the Packard Cup. We've got more on the history of that trophy when we come back. But right now, here's what we know. Syracuse wins the Packard Cup for the second consecutive season. Stick with us on ACC Network Extra. Plenty more to come when we return. Back in Syracuse, where the Orange took down the Big Green of Dartmouth, and Syracuse retains the Packard Cup for the second consecutive season. And they've been racing for this since 1959. Dana Gray is downstairs with more on the history of the trophy.
Thanks so much, Drew. Very exciting stuff down here with those first crews just coming in, and a lot of Orange fans very, very happy that SU just picked up its 30th ever Packard Cup victory. And this is a trophy that has a ton of history. It was first commissioned back in 1959, 60 years ago. Dartmouth and Syracuse first raced for it in 1960, and SU now with a decent advantage at 30-24 over Dartmouth and a couple historic programs here in the Northeast. And some crazy stuff about this actual cup of sterling silver. It's a lot more than just an object, especially with the history of Syracuse. The famed head coach, Ten Eyck, the story goes, back in 1902, he picked out a random SU sophomore, though not so random himself. It was Edward Packard. He said, "You're going to be my stroke seat in the IRA championships." 2 years later, 1904, SU picks up its first ever IRA title, and it was Edward Packard who was sitting in that very stroke seat. Namely, that's why we've got the Packard Cup for Syracuse and Dartmouth. Back up to you guys.
All right, Dana, thanks so much. Great stuff as always, talking about that Packard Cup, which now lives in Syracuse for the second consecutive season. Joe, you're obviously a big part of this program. Can you give us an idea of just how much it means to the guys on this team?
So even back when I was racing back in the late 1970s, it was always a dogfight with Dartmouth, and you took a lot of pride in that, mostly because we had so much respect for the Dartmouth program. These people are a lot like Syracuse. They're nothing fancy. They just do the work, get in and get it done. Certainly under Coach Wyatt Allen, that they've really had a remarkable resurgence over the last few years, too. So, as I said, I would fully expect Dartmouth to be well in the mix going forward, as I would Syracuse. So great racing for both crews. They're going to both take a lot away from this.
Yeah, head coach Wyatt Allen actually told us earlier this week that he thinks there's a lot of similarities between Syracuse and Dartmouth, because you asked him about that resurgence for his Big Green program, but he said it's actually pretty similar on the Orange side. So these are two up-and-coming teams.
Definitely. And it's a combination of both guys from the United States, and there's a number of internationals. We noted that the two guys in the engine room, 5 and the 6 seats for the Dartmouth varsity, were both European guys. In Syracuse, we had 3 internationals in the crew, including Nick Tavares, a U-23 member from Canada. So a lot of talent in both programs, and they're just sort of blue-collar, get in, pull as hard as you can, row as well as you can crews.
All right, so Syracuse wins today, the Packard Cup against Dartmouth. Let's go back to Dana for more on the renovations we'll see on Syracuse's campus next year.
Yeah, well, thanks so much, Drew. A lot of exciting things going on the SU Hill, specifically with the Archibald facilities. For a lot of students, that may just serve as a gym, but for the SU men's and women's rowing team, that's their home for pretty much the entire year. Those rowing tanks going all the way back to the 1900s, like I was talking about with Edward Packard. Those same very tanks where these student athletes are getting their practice just like those folks did 100 years ago. But finally, some much-needed renovations up on the hill for the SU men's and women's rowing team, getting those tanks looking just a little bit cleaner. After over a century of use, the space that's seen Olympians, champions, and legends alike is getting an upgrade, which is good because the team spends hours and hours in that one room.
The facility is I guess I'd call it crew central, right? It's certainly the focus of all of our on-campus efforts. It's where our kids pass through it each and every day. Even when we're on the water in the afternoon, they'll pick up morning workouts in the Arch facility. But certainly from Thanksgiving till spring break starts second weekend in March, that's home.
When I started out as a freshman, we learn all our technique in the tanks. You kind of get rid of old high school habits, and you're trying to learn how to be a collegiate rower. And knowing that we're getting ready to start renovations in that area, it's unbelievable to know that the longevity of that area, and knowing that we're getting ready to give it a facelift in there.
It's a contemporary and more inviting space for rowers at Syracuse today and to follow. Even though the technology might have grown in this hollowed training ground may look a bit cleaner, decades of history will live on.
Yeah, that'll be good. Yeah.
So a new look for the Syracuse rowing team, their headquarters on SU campus, looking a little bit better as we go through the next couple of seasons. Now Syracuse beats Dartmouth in that Packard Cup today, Joe, and we were just talking about it. That was an outstanding race. Really can't get over how fun that was at the end.
Fun for us. I can tell you for the guys in the boat, their legs were screaming all the way down the course. And the last 200, 300 meters, they were just all in. So you could see after the end of the race, everybody just collapsed in the boat. There was nothing left. So that's what you want to see.
So SU wins the 1V. Let's take a look at the 2V, Syracuse and Dartmouth. We've got 3 more races to go today for the Packard Cup. What stands out to you between these two sides, Joe?
A couple things. One is the stroke from the varsity in Dartmouth last week is now stroking the 2V. And there's a couple of changes. They moved a gentleman up from the 3V into the 3-seat of Dartmouth, and also moved Liam Keane, who was stroking the the 2V. I'm an old guy, into the 2-seat. For Syracuse, there's only one change. Cummings was moved down from the varsity into the 4-seat here. And Sunlee Stachuk is the stroke. He's been stroking the 3V for a year and a half. Move him in. He's a very talented stroke, so I think that was a great move on the part of Coach Jason Elephant.
All right, so Syracuse and Dartmouth in the 2V, ready to go. Let's go back to John Nicholson for all the action.
Larry Laszlo calling it out. Attention. And we have a start in the second varsity race. Syracuse once again on the inside in lane 2. Dartmouth in green on the outside in lane 1. Syracuse at 47 strokes a minute off the start. Dartmouth at 44, very similar to the last race. This looks higher to me, I have to say. And once again, Syracuse has jumped out by maybe a deck right at the start. Into this light headwind, still a bit of a ripple out here on the water. Otherwise, not bad at all. Dartmouth now has the lead by maybe 6 inches. 39 strokes a minute at the settle for Dartmouth. Syracuse now settling down as well. Syracuse at 38 strokes a minute. Reaching out, trying to be long into this headwind. Coming up on the 500-meter mark in less than 10 strokes. Crew's just about even. Syracuse now maybe jumping ahead by a couple of inches. And now Dartmouth takes it back. Across 500 meters. Dartmouth a deck lead. Looks like they made a little bit of a move there. 1:27, a minute and 27 for the first quarter of the race, 500 meters. Dartmouth at 37 strokes a minute. Reaching now and struggling into this wind. Dartmouth pushing out. Syracuse at 38, a stroke ahead in terms of speed, but Dartmouth is ahead in terms of the race and now has 2 or 3 seats on the Syracuse 8. Now moving up onto the breakwater with the halfway point just afterwards. 800 meters plus into the race. Dartmouth is opening up now a half-length lead. Dartmouth at 37. Nice and smooth and steady and moving that boat. Now Syracuse looks to be making a little bit of a lead as we come into the breakwater. Syracuse at 37. Dartmouth still about a half-length lead from our angles. We come behind them in our launch. Now into the smoother water. Just short of the 1,000-meter halfway mark. Syracuse staying at 38, overstroking the big green by 1. Let's see who's got a move at the halfway mark. A couple of strokes now to 1,000 meters gone. Dartmouth is across first. 2 minutes, 58 seconds at the halfway point. On a pace that'll be a bit slower than the first varsity race. Dartmouth looks nice and smooth now as we come up on the thruway bridge. Syracuse at 37. Dartmouth has close to a length, it appears, from here. Underneath the thruway bridge, Dartmouth with the lead. Dartmouth at 38 now is up a stroke in its rating. Now coming underneath the Long Branch Road Bridge and the Syracuse Boathouse just ahead. Syracuse at 37, now understroking the Big Green. Syracuse's second varsity is going to lead the kind of sprint that the first varsity had to just edge Dartmouth in the opening race. Barking out the orders to Syracuse. Syracuse's guys looking around a little bit. Dartmouth looks smooth and under control, coming up on 500 left. Let's see what Dartmouth has to hold off the orange. Let's see what the orange has as some kind of a move to come into this headwind, into this water of the channel. 500 gone, Dartmouth with just about a length, maybe even a tad open water. Syracuse at 38 strokes a minute. They're going to have to go and go sooner if they're going to catch Dartmouth. Dartmouth at 38 once again. Dartmouth looks smooth. Syracuse looks to be struggling just a bit. Dartmouth grabbed control less than 100 into this race, has held it since, and has gradually opened it up seat by seat. Syracuse at 30 a minute now. Couple of 100 meters to go. Dartmouth maintaining that solid lead. Dartmouth now at 39 as they take it up. Again, a little bit of as we come into the last 100 or so. We'll go the Boulevard.
I'm ready. And it looks like Dartmouth is going to be able to hold off Syracuse in this one. This is Joe Paduta from up above. It looks like Dartmouth has been able to retain enough power to keep that sprint going. As John Nicholson was noting, Syracuse is looking just a little bit choppy during the last 600 meters or so of that race. As Dartmouth comes under the bridge, Syracuse has pushed into them a little bit, but barring a major issue, it looks like Dartmouth is going to come away with a win in this 2V race. They're up about 42, 43 strokes a minute. Sunley Stachuk from the Syracuse 2V is trying to get the rating up, but it's going to be Dartmouth by a little bit over a boat length, maybe a boat length and a quarter. And Dartmouth comes away with the 2V in another great race that was almost a carbon copy of the one before, except the 2V from Syracuse wasn't able to match the sprint of their senior brothers.
So, Joe, you just said it. Syracuse digs itself a bit of a hole in that 2V, just like the 1V did, but the kick there from the 2V, maybe not quite as strong, but credit to Dartmouth, though. They really buried him.
They certainly did. Dartmouth, unlike in the first race, was actually able to really hold on to that. And as Nicholson was noting, Dartmouth was looking very smooth all the way down the course.
Absolutely. So Dartmouth cruises really to a win in that 2V against Syracuse. So one win apiece as the 'Cuse takes the Packard Cup in that 1V. In the 2V, it is Dartmouth who takes the win. We've got the highlights and the analysis when we come back on ACC Network Extra. Onondaga Lake in Syracuse, the site of the Packard Cup today in 2019. The Orange win the first varsity race, and they will retain the Packard Cup, and Dartmouth comes back with a win in that second varsity. Back alongside former Syracuse rower Joe Paduta, I'm Drew Carter, and Joe, go to races on those first two sets. Really intense stuff so far.
Yeah, especially the first 1,000 meters of both races looked a lot alike. The second 1,000 in the JV race, in the 2V race, Dartmouth was really able to hold off Syracuse, so kudos to the Big Green for that.
Let's see how it all went down. Sorry there, Joe. Don't mean to cut you off. Let's go right to those highlights of that 2V race. What stood out to you from this race?
So really, right off the line, both crews were fairly even. You saw Dartmouth just a little bit more efficient there. Syracuse is a little bit of whitewater, but both crews were rowing very effectively off the start. Then as I came through the 1,000 meters, right about the breakwater, you saw Dartmouth had inched out sort of stroke by stroke. They'd been able to put a little distance between them and Syracuse. It seemed like in that third 500 meters of the race, then as they were coming through the home stretch, if you will, Dartmouth really extended, coming in front of the dock. There's a lot of cheering going on there. 500 meters to go. This is when the legs are screaming. Now here it is coming under the finish. You see Dartmouth is really able to hold off Syracuse. Syracuse is not able to master the same kind of sprint that they were able to in the 1V race. Kudos to Dartmouth, really looking long and efficient all the way through, even at that high rating of 41, 42 strokes a minute.
Yeah, really the difference between those first two races was Syracuse with a massive kick down the stretch of the first varsity, able to win it, able to win the Packard Cup. This time, though, Dartmouth holds on and takes down Syracuse in that second varsity. Now, our very own Dana Gray downstairs with Syracuse's captain of the entire team. Forrest Sears was in that first boat. He's with Dana right now.
Well, thanks so much, Drew. Crazy stuff in that first race for us. And from your perspective, can you take us through what the emotions were like going down the stretch of that first race?
Sure, yeah. So we know Dartmouth is a really tough crew, and they were going to get out fast and set an aggressive base rhythm. So our strategy was just to get off the line and set a strong pace and, carry that through the body of the race. Obviously, they had a lead through the halfway mark, but we were able to come back in the sprint and win by a couple seats, so it was great.
Yeah, just barely there at the end. You kicked it into another gear. Yeah. What's going into that sprint as a group, or at least what's going through the boat to try and get to that final last push?
Yeah, so obviously we're trying to get out ahead. We're going into the last 500, the last quarter of the race. It's kind of winding up. We're upping the rate, we're upping the power, and we do a couple shifts to bump up the rate as high as we can go. It's not sustainable, but it's the end of the race, so we're just trying to get the bow out in front, and that's what we did.
So when you look around you right now, you've got lots of Orange fans, broadcasts on ACC Network Extra. What does this mean for you as a senior on this Orange team?
It's really great to see. Normally we don't have this kind of coverage for our sport, so it's really awesome that it's moving in that direction. It's great to race on the home course because we have a lot of fans from around here that come out to support, and obviously our families, so it's just really great to see.
Thanks, Forrest. Great job today. Appreciate the time. We'll send it back upstairs to Drew and Joe.
All right, awesome stuff, Dana and Forrest Sears. Syracuse wins the Packard Cup with a huge kick down the stretch. We've got plenty more to come. Boathouse Museum. We take a look at that here in Syracuse when we return, plus the 3V and 4V races. When we come back, our first ever rowing broadcast on ACC Network rolls along when we return.
Welcome back to Syracuse and the Tenike Boathouse for an impressive day of rowing so far between Syracuse and Dartmouth. A split decision at the moment as SU has retained the Packard Cup, its 30th all-time, and makes it back-to-back years. A very special place, a historic area in central New York at the Tenike Boathouse, and it's gotten a bit of a facelift over the last year or two. Obviously a ton of history with this program, and a couple of SU professors in their classes turned all that history into a very special museum.
I will be perfectly honest, with full credit to my colleague, I never thought it would look like this. This kind of a project is a dream for us. We do a lot of hands-on work in our program. We're very experiential and practically based, but this kind of creation of an exhibition from scratch is just an incredible gift for our students.
The collaboration between curator and exhibition designer is an important one, and for the curators to be able to articulate a very clear vision of what they need to be told in terms of the narrative, in terms of the story. And then the designers being able to take that and interpret that visually and in a physical space. That's something that is that's an experience that I'm glad these students got.
Our program was approached by athletics and to ask us if we had any interest in potentially doing this project. And they found out that the graduate program in museum studies existed and might be able to be of help. And they were boxes and boxes and boxes. We were spread out over the entire training room floor for the entire semester of papers, and we sort of sorted things into areas. What is on display here? Gosh, a tiny fraction of what is still up in the attic. Maybe halfway through the semester, when my class had a good idea of the objects that we wanted to use and the content that we were looking at, and Andrew's class came down to the boathouse and met us here, and we talked about objects, we talked about content, we looked at the space.
The space we're in is such a challenging space for a lot of different reasons. The fact that we're right on the water, the fact that there's a lot of light, a lot of natural light and ambient light that we have to deal with, a lot of environmental issues that we have to deal with, plus it's a long and narrow space which is not conducive to collections installation. There are a variety of things that are happening in this space where we're talking about the creation of the women's crew team. We're talking about the longevity of the history of this program going back to 1904. The boat was something that was found early on, and we weren't sure if it was going to make it into the space. We weren't sure if it was something that was going to make sense in the space. But the more research that the curatorial class did, we really thought that it was too good of an opportunity to not have this be a part of an installation that really talks about the history.
Back in the day, it was a tradition when you win to actually cut off the bow of that winning boat and save it. Yep, as a trophy. And one of the amazing things that we found were literally reams of paper that were all handwritten by Ten Eyck himself. Everything from, so he was a poet, so everything from poetry to writing about rowing to training plans to menus for his rowers. I mean, it was all of his kind of personal rowing related papers.
I think anybody coming away from this space should be impressed by the history of the program, but also be impressed by the continuing story about what's happening here. The fact that we're going to be adding elements to this. It's something that isn't static. It's something that can be added to, and that future alumni, future members of the team can look to and say, I was a part of that. That's important.
All right, very good stuff there from Dana talking about the Ten Eyck Boathouse here in Syracuse, and we are surrounded by history on our first ever broadcast of rowing on ACC Network Extra, back with former Syracuse rower Joe Paduta, Drew Carter on hand. We are in the museum on the upper level of this Ten Eyck Boathouse, bringing you this Packard Cup between Syracuse and Dartmouth today, the 59th iteration. Syracuse won that first varsity 8 for their 30th ever Packard Trophy. All right, we've made it to the 3V now, Joe. Let's take a look at those lineups between Syracuse and Dartmouth. Starting on the Syracuse side, a lot of youth, 5 freshmen in this 9.
Very young crew for SU. Also, there's a lot of youth in the Dartmouth boat as well. A couple of things I would point out here. One is Stachek, who normally strokes the 3V, was in the 2V. So we've got Kylie who's going to be stroking the boat. Again, as you mentioned, 5 freshmen. So these guys have not yet adapted to the full load of training. In the Dartmouth boat, we've got the 4V stroke has been moved up to the 3V. Clearly, that's because Bogdan Belinchevic, I hope I got that right. Thank you. Was doing a very good job for them. And then Bessler has moved down. He was a 4V 3-man. He's moved up, so clearly he's doing a good job as well. So the coaches at Dartmouth are doing everything they can to get a little bit more speed in every crew. I expect that this one is going to be a barn burner just like the first 2.
All right, well, if it's anything like those first 2 races, we are in for a treat on the 3rd varsity 8. They are locked and loaded, Syracuse and Dartmouth. Let's go down to the water with John Nicholson.
They are indeed locked onto the stake boats out here in Onondaga Lake, and Larry Laszlo, the referee, is getting set to start this race between the 3rd varsity crews. This time it'll be Dartmouth on the inside and Syracuse on the outside. Attention, go, and we have a start. Syracuse jumps out to a quick lead of a deck or so, and Dartmouth comes right back. Syracuse at 48 strokes a minute. Mighty quick. And here comes a mighty quick Dartmouth crew at 46, but moving the boat extremely well. Dartmouth now pulling ahead by about a deck. Still in the start. Syracuse at 42 now. This is a very good Syracuse 3rd varsity boat. Has not lost a race yet this year. Right now, Dartmouth has the lead by about a deck. Rowing into this slight headwind from the west-northwest. Conditions have been pretty much the same throughout the morning so far, this past hour. A little bit of ripple out here on the water. Syracuse settling at 38 strokes a minute. Dartmouth has opened it up by a couple of seats now. Looks like 3 as we come into 500 meters gone. Dartmouth will have the lead. The first crew to 1/4 of the way down the course. Dartmouth now half-length lead and moving strongly. 1 minute 27 seconds at the 500-meter mark. Now the crew's settling down in the second 500. Dartmouth trying to hang on to this lead. Looks like Syracuse might be rowing back just a little bit, maybe a seat. Dartmouth now at 36. And Syracuse overstroking them by 1 at 37 strokes a minute. Dartmouth looking smooth. And now out to about a 3/4 length lead as we come into the breakwater and that always smoother water, protected conditions. I would look for Syracuse to try to make a move into Dartmouth. Let's see who goes first. Dartmouth now clears the markers for the channel. And Syracuse right behind. Dartmouth almost a length now. Dartmouth coxswain looks like he's on the Syracuse 3 or 2 man as we swing behind here in the narrower channel. Couple of strokes to the halfway mark. Dartmouth will get there first. And the big green passes halfway in 2 minutes and 56 seconds. That's competitive with the time for the second varsities. Dartmouth pulling hard, perhaps harder, I should say, and expanding the lead as we come up on the New York State Thruway double bridge. Dartmouth's coxswain takes a look over at Syracuse and says, okay so far. Looks like Syracuse now is trying to make a bit of a power move here as we come up on the Long Branch Road Bridge. 36.5 strokes a minute now for Dartmouth. They've upped it just a tad. Dartmouth's coxswain now on Syracuse's 4-5 man maybe. You can probably see on your screen better than we can from behind whether Syracuse is moving into Dartmouth at all. They're now fewer than 10 strokes, 100 meters.
It looks like Dartmouth is maintaining its lead here. Just one quick comment. It looks like they're just being, Dartmouth may be a little bit sluggish here. They really went out hard, and that may be costing them a little bit of energy right here. Syracuse is trying to push back in as we go past the 500-meter to go mark. Syracuse is maintaining its rating, maybe have upped it a little bit. It looks like they might be moving back into Dartmouth from this angle. Either way, it's going to be a very tight finish, probably more reminiscent of the 1V than of the 2V. Dartmouth has increased their rating as well. Dartmouth, the big green's looking long and smooth. Looks like that little bit of sluggishness is left as they can smell the finish line. Dartmouth is overstroking. Syracuse are taking more strokes per minute at this point from the angle we have. Right now, about 250 meters to go. It looks like Dartmouth still is maintaining the lead, but Syracuse is pressing quite close behind. Looks like the orange is maybe a quarter boat length back. Dartmouth has increased their rating a little bit with about 25 strokes to go, and they're rowing probably about 39 strokes per minute. Syracuse is matching them maybe just a touch lower. Both crews really pushing hard. As we said earlier, this is going to be a tight race for everybody. Dartmouth has been able to hold off Syracuse so far. In the last 150 meters to go, about 10% of the race, we're going to see if Syracuse can push back in as they come under the bridge. As they come through the bridge, it looks like Dartmouth is still able to maintain. Syracuse is about 3/4 of a length back. Maybe 5 or 6 strokes to go. Dartmouth looks like they're going to win this 3V race. A little bit sloppy here, but the guys have earned their victory. It's going to be a close one. From this angle, folks, it is too close to call. I would say Dartmouth, but we're going to have to wait for the official word. Looks like Dartmouth by just a little bit, probably less than a second. Sorry.
So Syracuse looks like they fall to Dartmouth in that third varsity there, Joe, which is a little surprising because the Orange is 3V, the only undefeated boat this entire spring coming into this race. But what did Dartmouth do to kind of hang on there at the end?
Dartmouth was, again, what they did was they got out ahead, and they got out ahead just far enough so they did not run out of race course like they did in the 1V.
All right, so Syracuse wins that 1V and wins the Packard Cup, but Dartmouth comes back with back-to-back wins in the 2V and the 3V. Full highlights and analysis from that third varsity race when we come back on ACC Network Extra. Strong start for Syracuse today. They win that first Varsity 8 and retain the Packard Cup against Dartmouth, but ever since back-to-back wins in the 2V and the 3V for the Big Green, and they now lead 2 races to 1. Back alongside former Syracuse rower Joe Paduta, I'm Drew Carter, and let's take a look at how that 3V race went down, Joe, with our highlights. And again, a strong start for Dartmouth, just trying to stiff-arm Syracuse, and they were able to do it again.
They certainly were. Kudos to the Big Green. They were doing a terrific job off the start. They were rowing very high but very smooth. They were able to maintain a great position. And then as they came by the boathouse, you could see that they were moving a little bit better. Their rating was a little bit higher than Syracuse. So about halfway through the race course, deep into that third 500, Dartmouth had inched out just a couple of inches per stroke. They were able to do that push in front of the boathouse. They got the lift from the crowd. That's when you're absolutely dead. Then coming into the finish line, you saw Syracuse was able to take the rating up, work back in, and kudos to Kylie, the stroke of that 3V. Those guys were really pushing hard. Once again, Syracuse came back into Dartmouth in the last 100, 150 meters, making it a very close result. But the Big Green are the ones who came through with this one. Kudos to them. 3V did exactly what the 2V did.
Another tight race between Syracuse and Dartmouth. The official times, you see Dartmouth is very, very close over Syracuse, and the Big Green win it. Now, they also won that 2V. Another tight race between Syracuse and Dartmouth. Let's go down to Dana with a coxswain for Syracuse in that second boat, Alex Manfredi.
Well, thanks so much, Drew. Alex, a tough race in the outcome there in the second varsity for your group. What'd you see from your perspective at the back of the boat?
So it was a little tough. I mean, right from the get-go, Dartmouth established a pretty aggressive rhythm, and they kept kind of grooving it and walking away from us. We had a couple of pushes to try to work back into them, but Dartmouth they're a tough crew, and, hats off to them to really push and drive us back there. Yeah.
So a weekend like this where you're racing in a completely different state the day before, you come home in an early race today. What's that like, just wear and tear on the body?
It's tough for the guys. I mean, for the past 3 years that I've been here, we've never done this back-to-back racing, but I think it's a good experience for us to try to learn, when we're extremely fatigued. Dartmouth, same situation. They had a race yesterday, and just trying to see, what we can do in that fatigue level and prepare ourselves for Eastern Sprints and I-Race.
Thanks so much for your time, Alex. Appreciate it. We'll go back upstairs to Drew.
All right, so that's Dana with Syracuse's coxswain in that second boat, Alex Manfredi. Syracuse wins the Packard Cup today in that first Varsity 8. Dartmouth wins 2V and 3V. Now let's go over to the roundtable talking about Syracuse and Dartmouth in the Packard Cup, the importance of this race.
It's incredibly special. Last year we had the crew out and they did a tape delay, and the response from our alumni was fantastic. Going live this year, and one of the first ones we've certainly done here at SU. It's going to be awesome. Rowing lends itself well to live videos, so I think should be lots of good shots today.
In your 17th year with the program, for those that are watching that might not know a whole lot about Syracuse rowing, what can you kind of say about the state of the program?
It's been a good 17 years. I feel like I probably have about 1 million gray hairs for each one of them. It's been a fun building project. We've had, as most programs do, we've had some ups and downs over the 17 years. We hit a high point in 2012 of finishing 5th in the country. Took a little step back as we sort of
resorted our recruiting and whatnot, and we feel like we're on the build right now. The last 2 years, we've finished the season ranked 8th in the country. Right now, we're ranked 9th, and hope we can improve on that with today's racing.
Yeah, and already a couple of victories, already some hardware in 2019. What can you say about this group of kids that you've got here this season?
It's, it's led by a group of 4 seniors who 3 of them have been in our varsity boat for the last 3 years since they were sophomores, 1 since he was a freshman, which is a bit unusual. They've provided the leadership and experience for the group, and they're certainly leading the charge. We've done some good early season racing. We've been trying out a couple of lineups here and there. Everything we do, though, builds for our Eastern Sprints Championship, which is our league championship, and then the Intercollegiate Rowing Association Championship, which is our national championships in June.
So yourself with the men's program for 17 years, changeover on the women's side. Luke McGee in his first season with the program. What's it been like for you to watch him from maybe afar or even close? Is there a good level of communication between you two as you both try and build up the men's and the women's side respectively?
Yeah, I've known Luke for a long time, and I remind him of this quite a bit. I actually coached Luke in the summer of 2001. I was doing some work for the U.S. national team. He was just graduating from Brown University and was in our selection group. So I got the chance to know Luke then. I've watched his coaching career develop from there, first at Brown, then Washington, and then with the U.S. national team. He's a fantastic young coach. I think what I like best about him is he's a little bit of a rowing nerd like me, right? So we can sit in the office and throw ideas back and forth, and you're saying them to somebody that's not going to discount them. They're going to give it a thought, and we do that a lot. We talk a lot about our programs and things we want to do, and hopefully, I know I've learned a lot from him. Hopefully he's learned a thing or two from me.
But how much fun is it for you to watch not only the individuals grow, but as a team as well coming together?
We've worked a lot on our team culture, and I think one of the best moments for me is we had a team goal at the national championship last year to get all 3 of our boats into the top 10, and the varsity came down the course first and finished 8th, and then our second boat came down and finished 9th, and when our 3V was on the course, all of our guys were on the shore watching and making a lot of noise as they came down and finished 10th to accomplish that goal. And I think there were a lot of other teams kind of looking at this Syracuse group going nuts over a lower boat finish in the race. But that's kind of culture that we've developed. Everybody's all in, everybody roots for everybody else, and we like to go out there and race hard and see what we can do.
So your best finish as a coach, coming back in 2012, you finished fifth at the IRA Championships. What's the ceiling for this group in 2019? Obviously, the end goal is clear. What do you think can happen?
That's always an interesting question. I think part of the trick with today's young people is to keep them focused on the here and now. And our guys will certainly tell you that they want to make the grand finals at the IRA. That's a goal of all of our boats in our program. But we try and stay away from that and try and focus on the everyday. We just try and focus on the next stroke and try and make it as good as we possibly can.
And with that in mind, today, a very special moment for you guys, a chance to win your 30th Packard Cup, a trophy that goes all the way back into the early 1900s, 1904. Edward Packard in that stroke seat for the first ever Syracuse IRA title. How much does that say about not only the history of rowing here in Syracuse, but specifically this trophy?
It's an important one. I would say it's probably second to the Goes Trophy in our list of trophies. We're excited. Dartmouth is always a tough crew to race. Their coach is another young, exciting coach that has a lot of international experience, and they'll be ready and they'll be racing hard.
Well, Coach, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for everything you've done for this Syracuse program, and good luck out there today.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Dana. With Syracuse head coach Dave Reichman, been at the helm of this program since 2002, so he knows exactly what that Packard Cup means to this program, and Syracuse wins it again today for the second consecutive year and the 30th time in program history. Back alongside former Syracuse rower Joe Paduta, I'm Drew Carter, and Joe, it's been an exciting day so far. Not even 9 a.m. We've already had 3 very fun, intense races down the stretch, starting with that first varsity race, which was an instant classic.
It certainly was. Then we've got the 3V race and the 2V race. Both of them went Dartmouth's way. Kudos to the Big Green. What we're seeing with all of these races is it's almost a carbon copy. Dartmouth gets out ahead, maintains it. In one of the races, the 1V, Syracuse was able to come back. Obviously, in the 2V, Dartmouth was able to hold Syracuse off. But in that last race, the 3V, who has a legendary sprint and has for the last couple of years, came back and only lost by less than half a second. So we're talking less than a deck, maybe 5 or 6 feet over 2,000 meters, so less than 2 meters separated the two crews. So great rowing for both of them. This is the 2V race. You can see Dartmouth is really able to hold its lead all the way through, really stroking high towards the end, able to hold Syracuse off. The Dartmouth 2V clearly has an excellent sprint. The 3V, we see Syracuse really coming on strong here, and they're able to push their bow almost up. The guys are giving it all they have. It's going to crush them that they've got to give their shirts to Dartmouth after losing by maybe 2 meters over a 2,000-meter course.
That was a blistering race for the 3V. Really, your fastest times of the day came in that third varsity race. You see the big gap for Dartmouth, 6 minutes even in that 2V. Maybe the most impressive performance of the day after Syracuse won that first varsity. And then the 3V, not too shabby either from both sides with a neck-and-neck finish down the stretch. Takes us now to 4V, though, as Syracuse and Dartmouth will wrap up the day. Lineups here for your starters between Syracuse and Dartmouth in the 4V. What stands out to you here, Joe?
Again, you've got some pretty young crews here, which you would expect in the 4V and in the 3V. For Dartmouth, we've got a lot of changes as they switch their stroke man as they switch their stroke man back down in the boat, and they switch the bow man up into the stroke seat. As a former bow man, I think that's where we should be anyways. For Syracuse, no changes. So a lot of changes in the Dartmouth crew from last week. This week, very, very few changes, or actually no changes in the Syracuse crew. 4V's had some success for both programs. I'm predicting this is going to be the same as the earlier ones.
Should be another tight race between Syracuse and Dartmouth. John Nicholson down on the water.
And the crews are underway. Syracuse is closest to us in lane 2 and Dartmouth on the outside in lane 1. The Big Green has jumped out to a deck lead, maybe a little bit more already here as we're still in the start. High rate of speed for these fourth varsities. These guys, great deal of pride on the line. They want to show they can do as much as anybody can do in terms of giving their all. They're still figuring out in some cases how to row well, how to row together. But they're going to go hard, no question about it. Dartmouth already with a half length, maybe 3/4 length. 38 Dartmouth. Dartmouth rowing at 38 now already in the settle. And Syracuse also at 38. Dartmouth jumping out to almost a length lead, and we're still short of the 500 meters gone. Dartmouth now at 37. Smooth rowing. Dartmouth stern is on the Syracuse bow. Coming into 500 meters, Dartmouth is going to pass it with a length lead on the orange 4V. Syracuse now at 35 strokes a minute. Dartmouth has a bit of open water on the orange. Big Green reaching out. Smooth and strong and a half length open now. The Big Green jumped right off the start. Rowing also a 35, a relatively low rate into this slight headwind. Dartmouth has now almost a length open on Syracuse. The referee is advising the coxswains in both crews to look for their markers on the bridges ahead. Stay in their lanes now. Dartmouth is now into the smoother water of the channel. Syracuse with a couple of strokes to get by the markers. Dartmouth still with a length open here in this fourth varsity race. And the big green coming up to the halfway point. A stroke or two to get there. A little bit of splash by the Dartmouth crew, but no difficulties at all. Now in the second 1,000 meters of the race, the final race of the morning between Syracuse and Dartmouth. Big Green maintaining that lead smoothly. A length open, it looks like, from here behind the crews. And underneath the throughway bridge go the Big Green. Syracuse rowing at 35.5 strokes a minute now. 34.5. And Dartmouth at an even lower 34.5. Both crews nice and straight underneath the lane markers on the Long Branch Road Bridge. The Big Green looking like they're going to make it 3 in a row after Syracuse won the opening race, the 1V, first varsity, and took the Packard Cup in a bang-bang finish. Coming up now on the Syracuse Boathouse on the 500 meters to go mark. Dartmouth still with open water lead over Syracuse. Dartmouth rowing now at 35 strokes a minute, picking it up just a half a stroke. And Syracuse has gone up to 36. Dartmouth looking for wire to wire. Big Green got a very, very strong start in this race. Dartmouth's a nice, easy 34.5. I don't know that they're going to have to sprint or that they'll try it for practice. And now they are going to try it for practice. Dartmouth jumping it up to 37 strokes a minute and maintaining that lead of open water over Syracuse, which also appears to be picking it up a bit. Underneath the John Glenn Bridge Boulevard. Check that John Glenn Boulevard Bridge. Dartmouth maintaining open water. Nice, strong, smooth, relatively low. Big Green through raises the flag at the finish line. And the flag is down. Dartmouth is the fourth varsity.
All right, so the Big Green take that fourth varsity race. And, Joe, how about that bounce back from Dartmouth after losing the first varsity at the 11th hour right down the stretch? They come back with 3 straight wins.
Kudos to Dartmouth. Obviously, they have a lot of depth in that program, and those crews all raced extremely well. Great for those coaches.
All right, so when we come back, the trophy presentation. Syracuse does win the Packard Cup today for the 30th time in program history against Dartmouth. When we return, we'll see the Orange accept that trophy and break down all 4 races from today's action. Stick around. Packard Cup is in the books for the 59th time. Syracuse wins it against Dartmouth with the Big Green with a strong showing today, and Syracuse nonetheless as they win the last 3 races of the day. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Ten Eyck Boathouse in Syracuse as we put the finishing touches on our first ever rowing broadcast on ACC Network Extra. I'm Drew Carter, back alongside Joe Paduta and a special friend. The Packard Trophy is here in the boathouse. Is it heavy, Joe?
Yeah, it weighs a couple of pounds, but it's not nearly as heavy as the guys' legs, both in the Dartmouth and the Syracuse varsity after contending for this. So kudos to the Big Green for their second, third, and 4V wins.
True that. It has been an outstanding day of racing here in Syracuse. We just watched that 4V race wrap up. Let's take a look at those highlights. And, Joe, you can put the trophy down so your workout is over here. What did you see from this last race of the day?
You know, the last race, Dartmouth, kudos to them because they were able to get off the line pretty effectively, and they were able to maintain their lead going through and actually extend the lead all the way through probably until the last 600 meters. Dartmouth really did not have to sprint. They'd raised the rating up to 37.38, which is base pace really, which is no sprint. They had it down as low as 34.5. They just, coming through, they looked relaxed, they looked long. Syracuse did not look crisp in that race. I did not see the middle of the boat getting their oars in the water crisply, not backsplash off the oars. It just looked like they were rowing the oars in the water, as we talked about earlier. That's just not going to win against a crew as talented and as tough as the Dartmouth Big Green. So great job for Dartmouth all up and down. Really a lot of depth in that program. Coach Allen's going to be able to build on that in weeks to come.
Wire-to-wire win there for Coach White Allen's 4V group, and we were talking with him earlier this week, and you mentioned they've got 5 full boats of rowers that they can go to. Very impressive depth in that Dartmouth program. So let's see how it all went down today in the Packard Cup between Syracuse and Dartmouth. Mentioned that first varsity 8. SU wins it with a blistering 5:51 time. Down the stretch, they were rock solid, but then Dartmouth with 3 really good races in the 2 through 4V.
Yeah, and except for the differentials in terms of who won which race by how much, all of them are pretty much patterned out the same, right? Dartmouth and Syracuse are pretty even off the line, except in the 4V race where Dartmouth actually was able to move out ahead. But all the rest of them, it was pretty close. Dartmouth would move out a little bit. Syracuse would hang on, and in the varsity, they were close enough to win that race. In the 3V, heartbreaker for them, less than half a second between, but Dartmouth was able to hold them off. So Dartmouth brings home the 2, 3, and 4 for essentially being able to take the rating up and hold it just long enough to keep Syracuse off. Syracuse was hard charging on all of those finals, so great for those guys too.
What a day of rowing it was here today in Syracuse at Tent Ike Boathouse. Our first ever broadcast on ACC Network for rowing. This was fantastic. Thanks so much for joining us. So Syracuse retains the Packard Cup. They win it for the 30th time in program history, and Dartmouth wins the last 3 races of the day. So for Joe Peduta, my fantastic partner, John Nicholson down on the water, Dana Gray on the sidelines, our director Scott Hecht, our producer Kristen Hennessy. Shout out Jim Hamilton, our cameraman Tom White, our technical guru. I'm Drew Carter saying so long from Tent Ike Boathouse in Syracuse. We will see you next time. Thank you so much for joining us. A reminder, our next telecast on ACC Network Extra this Wednesday, Cornell versus Syracuse in softball. Watch the Packard Cup on replay on WatchESPN.com. Thanks so much for joining us.